This video, I'm going to be talking about nested if. Here's the format for nested if. It's basically an if statement nested within another if statement. Using nested if could be helpful if you are checking a number within a range or if you're checking different variables and if they meet certain conditions. We're going to look at two examples. The first example, we're going to test user input and check if that number is within a range. The second example, we're going to test different user input to check if they meet certain conditions. In the first example, I want to test the number that the user enters if it's within a range. To test a number within a range, you need to have a max value, which is the highest number within that range, then a minimum value, which is the lowest number within that range. You can use the numbers directly in your code. However, it's better practice for you to define variables and assign the maximum value and low value to these variables. When you define variables, you can define and assign in the same line, and you can define multiple variables. Here's an example. So int for integer, int max equal 100. I can continue defining variables and assign them in the same line. So in this line, I defined 3 variables and assigned 2 of them. So this is one way you can define variables, or you can define each one in its own line, then you assign them in a different line. If you like to define each variable in its own line, you can do that. You define 3 variables. Now I can assign the values that I need. Both will give you the same results, so decide which one you are more comfortable with. Now that I defined the variables and assigned the ones that I need for the range, I need to ask the user to enter input. To do that, I'm going to send one output statement. I need to read the information from the user, and that information or that number should be saved in the int read number. Since int read number is of data type integer, I need to make sure that I convert the variable that the user enters to an integer. Now I have all the information I need for my application, so now I'm going to use nested if to test the number if it's within the range. When you are testing variables, always be very careful with the operations that you use. So in this case, I used greater than integer minimum. So I want to test if the user's input is higher than 1. However, 1 is included in the range. So using higher will create a logical error, because if the user entered 1 using this operation, 1 will not be part of the range. To fix that, it has to be greater or equal. The same thing when I want to test the number if it's equal or lower than the max value. For a number to be within the range, it has to be higher or equal to the minimum and lower or equal to the maximum. If both of these conditions were true, that means that the user entered a number within the range. If any of these conditions is false, that means that the user entered a number outside of the range. 50 is within the range. You saw that the message, please enter a number within the range, will always be displayed. In other types of if statements, there is if else that gives you a little bit more control of your application. Using if else gives you a little bit more control over the application, so you can execute certain conditions and certain outputs. If the condition is true, if the condition is false, you can execute a different set of outcomes. So if else gives you a little bit more control, and that will be helpful in the situation we have in this application. Now let's take a look at the second example. In the second example, I want to read account number and password from the user and compare them to the ones I have inside of the code. If both of them are true, then that is the right customer, and I want to show that customer their balance in the back. Otherwise, I'm just going to display a message that says thank you. I'm going to define an account number. I'm going to define and assign all of the variables in the same line. The password, I'm going to define a variable of data type string. Strings are case sensitive, so the user have to enter the word password with using the same case for the letters. Now I'm going to define balance. Since balance use numbers with fractions, I have three options with data types. I can use double, I can use decimal, or I can use float. In this example, I'm going to use double. Now I'm going to send two output messages to the user. The first one is going to ask them to enter their bank account. I'm going to read that bank account and save it in int read user account. The second output statement will ask them to enter their password, and their password will be saved in str user password. Once I have that information, I'm going to compare it to the values that I have inside of the system. If they're both true, then I'm going to show the user the balance. If one or both are false, I'm going to display just a simple thank you message. I'm going to create the nested if. Nested if is going to test if the user account number that they entered is the same as the account number I have in the system. The second if statement is going to test whether the password that the user entered matches the one I have inside my code. If both of these conditions are true, I'm going to display the balance amount. I'd like the balance to be displayed in currency format, so I'm going to use the toString function. If one or both of these, I'm just going to send a simple thank you message. Here the user input was the wrong account number and the wrong password. Here the user entered the right account number and the password looks correct. However, string is case sensitive, so it has to match the letter casing. The password I have in the system is a lowercase p. This time the user entered the right account number, the right password, so my system displayed the balance to that user. It's worth reminding that changing the alignment of output messages will not impact the functionality of your application. If you want to execute more than one line of code, if both conditions are true, make sure that you put them between curly braces. instead of changing the alignment of output. Changing the alignment of output will not make any change on the way your program function. So if I want to execute more than one line of code, if both conditions are true, I need to add curly braces. Now when you run the code, if both conditions are true, these three output messages will be displayed to the user. Then the final message will be a thank you. Here you can see the output when the user enters the right information. Removing the curly braces. This will impact the functionality and the validity of your code. Because right now, when you remove the curly braces, only the line that says your input is correct is part of the nested if. What this means that if the user enters the right account number, the right password, your input is correct is the only part of the output messages that is part of the nested if. This will create a major issue in your application because if the user entered the wrong information, they will still receive the output message that shows the balance. So your application is no longer secure. It doesn't check the user's information. Everybody can enter any kind of information and they will still have access to the balance. So in this case, I entered the wrong account number, the wrong password, but I still got the balance displayed. So please be careful when you want to display more than one line of code to the user. The alignment of lines doesn't matter. They have to be between braces if you want them to be attached to the nested if statement. I hope you found this video helpful. Have a great rest of your day.